I do believe this video can provide us with evangelistic opportunities if we have one in hand and have one available, and it opens a door of conversation. So I don't have the sheets for you to fill in this time. It's a lot of work. I did transcribe 9 pages of it so I can follow, but I want us in each section just to pay attention. We'll stop it every so often, and let's interact with what you've seen and what strikes you from the part that we've just seen. Okay, Rusty, let's go ahead and roll it here.
I grew up in Cuba, and I never thought that Cuba would become a communist country. Many people at that time warned the Cuban that what was going on was a communist takeover, but we say, no, that won't happen here. No one even dreamed that. And I see it, the same thing repeating here in the United States now. And I feel very uncomfortable about, because I know what is the end of it. And I know that after a while, there will be absolutely nothing that the American people will be able to do. And they will lose everything they own, everything they know. And don't even think that you will be even safe inside your own house, because you won't be. They will come and get you wherever you are. They will take your arms. They will take everything, and your way of life, everything. And you will be just a pawn of the state.
You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
And this is the point I think Americans need to comprehend. If America goes down economically, it will go down militarily. If America goes down militarily, we all go down. The free world is finished, and it'll be finished for a very, very long time.
Everything, practically, is in a self-destructive mode.
We're in the most critical period we've been since the Revolutionary War.
You're not alert, you're not awake with what's happening.
They would just as soon see this country on its knees and everything equalized.
That concept of collectivism, big government, is a magnet for the predator class.
The plans for all of this are to have everything globally in place by 2020.
If we're that dumb and we allow this to happen, we deserve everything we're going to get, because we're going to get it right in the neck.
We're headed into what could be a nightmare that would make all the atrocities of the 20th century look like they were a dress rehearsal.
When people are afraid, they ask government to do more, not less.
Their theories are designed to scare the people to believe there's a crisis when there is not a crisis at all. There's no crisis.
I think we're losing more and more freedom because we are afraid.
The left wants you to believe that catastrophe is always just around the corner. And the only way to avoid it is to do exactly what they say. But this film will show everything they do is just a Trojan horse of deceit, carefully crafted to advance their real agenda of finishing America off.
We have been the main stumbling block to world communism since it first raised its ugly head.
From the promotion of Islam to the propaganda of climate change, from the deceit of Common Core to the manufactured economic crisis, and from their manipulation of the evangelical church to the unsustainable debt burden. This film will show the issues are simply being used as a smokescreen to hide the purposeful, premeditated, treasonous attacks on the foundations of our freedom.
The war on religion has just purged us from being able to determine right from wrong.
You know what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said about Russia? How the communists took over Russia? He said, "We forgot God."
Their stated agenda, carved in stone on a monument in Georgia and outlined in documents placed in the Ark of Hope, is to eliminate 6.5 billion people by century's end. And they will succeed if we don't stop them.
This is not just a fight for the United States of America. This is a fight for civilization itself.
It's everything Karl Marx dreamed of before our very eyes.
I think they've pushed us over the cliff in ever since. America isn't going to fall. We are falling.
Okay. What are your observations? What strikes you right off? Joan? Yes. Yes.
And in the, wasn't that just last week that they had the Democratic debate?
Sure.
And that came out. Would you support it? Well, yes, we'd come and get your arms if we needed to.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. And you
Yes.
said 2020.
Yes. Yes. All right. Other observations that struck you? Yes, John. Thank you, Aaron.
I'm going to take a little different view of what we just saw.
Okay.
We just saw several people making statements. Only one, the first gentleman from Cuba, had evidence. The others were just statements without evidence. And I think it weakened their point. They should have given some evidence beyond their own thought process.
Well, I think this would be what's called a tease. That's the first, it's the tease of the film to get you into watching. The evidence will come as the film progresses. Yeah, that's a good point. All right? Any other thoughts that struck you? 2020. So Barbara sent me a link this week concerning Bill Gates' plan to seed the atmosphere with calcium carbonate. There are scientists at Harvard, I think, that are working on this project, have been for some time. Bill Gates is funding it to the tunes of millions of dollars. And what they said at the end about, by the way, the stone statue at the end in Georgia, that's factual because it's their design is to wipe out 6.5 billion people by the end of this century. You say that's not possible, and they put it right in public? Yeah. And Bill Gates, by the way, is funding a project that is seeking, they're going to do it in the guise of global warming because it's so hot that we have to seed the atmosphere with dust. Airplanes will take literally tons of dust up into the atmosphere, seed the atmosphere to filter out the sun so that plants won't grow, with the objective of killing the production of plants to kill the production of food so that people will starve by the billions. And they're not even hiding it. They're not even hiding it. You can go online and find, I can't remember the name of this project. There are not just Christians that are concerned about this. There are secular guys like the guy in the article that Barbara sent me. Many things that he said, of course, I don't agree with, but the thing about what Bill Gates and his investment in this and scientists' investment in it is real. And by the way, Jeffrey Epstein plays into all of this because his whole scheme of immoral activity was primarily with globalists. Primarily what he was doing was with globalists, and he would film them and keep it as evidence to use against them for when he got in trouble. He was in the middle of a horrific scheme of immorality, but huge payoffs. You just came out yesterday about one of the guys at MIT, one of the research assistants, who was organizing for Jeffrey Epstein to go there in their research projects, and he's just now had to step down from his position because it's come out, there is so much corruption going on at high levels, and it involves all kinds of people high up in government in this country and others. This is serious, serious stuff that we're talking about, but their objective is to eliminate 9/10 of the world population within the next 50 years. And it's mind-boggling to us. We have a hard time accepting that. But when they've got it written in stone, you know it's not make-believe. All right, let's go ahead and watch the next section here, Rusty.
In 2007, I was a state representative, and I had no idea the things I would discover about why America was collapsing from within would motivate me to take my life savings and make a film. And I had never made a film before. During the 2 years it took to finish the project, my children prayed daily that it would win the largest single cash prize film festival in America, which in my thinking was a mighty tall order. But of course, it wasn't for God.
The 2010 $101,000 grand prize for Best of Festival goes to Agenda!
God is so good. I'd like to thank him for just the wonderful wife he gave me. I don't think any man can even reach a fraction of his potential if he doesn't have the woman with him that God intended him to have for life. And I want to thank her. Kids, I'm giving this to you so you always remember God does answer prayers. Thank you so much.
After the festival, Agenda began to spread throughout the country. Millions of people were watching it. We had an average of 1,000 different independent showings every single week for 2.5 years. And as we traveled, people all over just seemed overwhelmed. The people I spoke to felt they were under attack from 100 different enemies with 100 different agendas. But I knew from my research that wasn't the case. If things are always moving in one direction in a unified fashion, there is a reason why. Consistency has never been a virtue of ignorance. An experience we had along the way finally put into place a missing piece of the puzzle. We had a Tea Party group that met monthly at a local community college in Minnesota. We showed the film Agenda, and then afterward, as I was answering questions, a man stood up. He said, "I want to congratulate you on your research and how you found all the socialist, communist influences that have changed America. My hat's off to you." I said, "Thank you, sir." But then he stopped, and I could tell something was coming. He said, "I want to tell you something. I'm a professor at this college. I am a communist, and we will win because we're taking all your children." And then he walked out. A woman in the front row who was crying said, "How could he be at our little community college?" I said, "Ma'am, he is at every school in America. Even though many are starting to wake up, they're studying the issues, they're reading books, they care about this country. They didn't know the most fundamental thing you have to know to ever win a battle of subversion. Your enemy. One of the radical Marxist leaders of the 1960s, I think, gave us the key that we are facing today. He said, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. These masters of deceit have used their propaganda so successfully, they've actually accomplished the greatest feat in warfare. They have convinced us they no longer exist, which has given them carte blanche to subvert, manipulate, deceive, infiltrate, and undermine us with no resistance whatsoever. I realized we didn't understand our enemy at all, their strategy or tactics, their strengths or weaknesses. My work wasn't finished. There was still so much that people didn't understand about the things they have done and are doing to use the issues against us as tools to destroy.
All right. So, for me, the content is so intense. I got to stop it and think. Don't just keep ripping through, because you can, the next fact makes you forget the previous one. So he started so after the film had success, he started doing these showings all over America. So this was 2010, right? Started showing, and millions of people were watching. An average of 1,000 different independent showings every single week for 2.5 years. Let's see, 52, 104, you can do the math. So 125 times 1,000 people, more or less, or 1,000 showings. So a lot of showings of the film. What was the net result? Pretty much nothing, unfortunately. And that was his concern. And so at one of these festivals, he's at a local community college, and the professor stands up, says, congratulations, you did a great job, you figured out what we're doing, but it doesn't matter, we're going to beat you anyway. Why? We have your children. Is it true? It is true. So what is our defense? Prayer. We teach our children. I think we have to win our children. I think we have to win our children back. I think we don't realize how quickly we have lost our children. I believe a big part of the battle happens around the family table. If we neglect the family, sitting down as a family together around the table, I think we've lost battlefield number one. And there are millions of children from Christian homes all over America that have virtually no meaningful communication with their parents during the week at all, other than, is your homework done? That's not sufficient. We need to be sitting down and talking. Yesterday, Joan and I went to the barbecue of Cornerstone Christian School where she teaches, and we had the opportunity to sit down and talk with a husband and wife that teach at the school. And it was interesting while we were sitting there talking, and the wife said, yeah, from my, I was reading the Bible the other day. She says, I was just telling Greg that, and she started telling about what she'd read in the Bible, in her Bible reading. And I says, wait, stop. Are you telling me you actually talk about the Bible at home? You actually talk about the Bible? And Mr. Uttinger says, yeah, and sometimes in front of the kids. And by the way, you can see the results. Now, we have a real enemy, and we have a spiritual enemy who's Satan, and we have his minions in this world that are involved in this agenda, and their object is to take our children. They don't care about the other guys, they already have them. Their object is to take our children. And unless we take this incredibly personal and get incredibly involved and engaged, and there's 1,000 ways that the enemy will grab our children, right? I mean, man, I love playing soccer, but sports can be one of the tools that Satan uses to get our children. And we have to be so incredibly careful, sports or entertainment or drama, all kinds of things that can take our children away. All right? So, let's see what else here. Anything else jump off the page for you? Okay. And so he said the issue is never the issue. So here we are addressing the issues. And the issues are just subterfuge to cover what they're really doing. And so the real problem that he came to realize that we have completely missed is what? Yeah, he talked about knowing our enemy. We don't realize who the enemy is and what they're doing. And because we're ignorant of who the enemy is and how they're working, this is like the woman saying, what? How come he's right here in our community college? And the answer is he's in schools everywhere. Huh? Oh, I don't know if there's anybody that isn't. I take it back. I mean, there may be, but oh my goodness, absolutely. Oh, no question, no question. Their agenda is, well. Okay, so, okay, all right. Who's our enemy?
2,500 years ago, in his masterpiece, The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote, "If you know yourself, you will win the battle 50% of the time. If you know your enemy, you will win 50% of the time. But if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you will win 100% of the time."
If you don't know who we are as a nation, you don't know our identity, you don't know our history, you don't really understand the price that's been paid for America, then anybody can lead you astray.
Once we understand who we are, it will be easy to identify our enemies by those that are attacking the foundations we stand upon. So before the last 100 years of subversion, who were we? What made America the greatest country of all time? God established 3 institutions: the family, the church, and the state. And he told us exactly what their authority was to be and what was within their jurisdictions. America's greatness was that we followed God's instruction on how those institutions should be run. All 3 were created by God to protect each individual person from being abused by the collective. Every attack against us today is aimed at destroying those distinctions. It's interesting to note the Communist Manifesto states the communist goal is to destroy the family, the church, and the state, all 3 of God's institutions. So regardless of how well-intentioned, the enemies of America are all the people and groups that seek to transfer the authority God gave the family and church to the state. And they are collectivists.
Collectivism is a broad ideology that includes all of these things like communism, fascism, Nazism, socialism, left-wingism, liberalism. All of these different words are used to describe different flavors of collectivism. And collectivism is the concept that the state is all important and that the individual must be sacrificed, if necessary, for the greater good of the greater number.
Unfortunately, the end of all collectivist schemes is a government that takes care of its citizens from the cradle to the grave, and that is Marxism. The people that don't understand this naively believe you can have big government without totalitarian methods, and history has shown us you cannot.
From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That was the grand ideal, right? But the problem has always been no one steps down. Once you have the power, no one steps down. And the reality is that beautiful picture was just a picture. It was a fiction. No one ever intended on stepping down.
Therefore, that's the reason, no matter what government you go to, whether it's the national government in Washington, D.C., or you go down to your city hall some Thursday night and take a look of who are those people sitting up there in those big chairs, you know, while the little people come in and say, well, I'd like to complain about this. And they say, your time is up, you know. Who are those people in the city hall? They're collectivists, every one of them. They're enjoying this power. They've been drawn to that power. They're predators.
Big government will never work because no one is capable of being in charge. We like to think of Hitler and Stalin as if they were uniquely evil people. But the simple truth is, every single person on the planet would have done the exact same things they did if they believed their philosophies and weren't accountable to any higher authority. Ideas have consequences. What you believe affects what you will do. They weren't uniquely evil. They were sinful men like the rest of us, but they had exceptionally bad ideas, the same ones we are playing with today.
America was based on the opposite concept of individualism, was that the purpose of the state was not to govern the individual, but to protect the individual. The individual was supreme, and the state was the servant of the individual.
In America, valuing each person, this is biblical. This comes from Christianity. You go to communist countries or Islamic countries, life is not valuable. You know, you kill, so what?
You can put it in whatever package you want, but the facts are, the mantra of our age being accepted worldwide is from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. And that is communism.
All right. So if you know yourself, you win 50% of the time. If you know your enemy, you win 50% of the time. If you know both, you win 100% of the time. And then he has Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, who says, if you don't know who you are as a nation, you don't know our identity, you don't know our history, you don't really understand the price that's been paid for America, then anybody can lead you astray. You think about what's being taught in our public schools and how the curriculum's being rewritten in the area of history. And now what children are being taught in the state of California is the great accomplishments of homosexuals. Yeah. Well, obviously you don't have time to teach about George Washington if you're teaching about Harry Milk or whatever his name was, Harvey Milk. And so this is what's happening in our public school system, is they're taking the real history and they're removing it and they're putting in place of it history that is subverted at the very least. So when you have, and Joan, were you just telling me about somebody talking about Adolf Hitler and their something about who was Adolf Hitler? He was a guy that liberated the slaves or something. Who was just telling me that? Somebody was just telling me that. Maybe it was yesterday at where we were. The young people growing up absolutely have no idea about recent history, let alone distant history. And so we're in this situation where I was really impressed. I saw on YouTube a group in Canada took a whole group of students over to Poland to go through Auschwitz. And what an impact it had on those kids. But the vast majority of American children in our public school system don't have any clue of these things. And so they're rewriting history in such a way that our children have no idea what was the First World War. Forget about that entirely. But Second World War, they have no clue whatsoever, and why it's important and what it has to do with where we are today, to the point where why would we fight to defend this country? Our children are being taught this country is the main evil in the world. Okay? So he asks the question, before the last 100 years of subversion, who were we? What made America the greatest country of all time? Remember what he said? Talked about three God-given institutions. What are they? Family and the state. But what collectivism is taking the authority of the family and the church and giving it to the state. So family and church have no power whatsoever. And so the tools that they've used in the family is entertainment and all kinds of attractions to get families all separated from each other. And what they've used in the church is they've used a phrase that was written in a letter by Thomas Jefferson, the separation of church and state, and they've completely turned it on its ear and made it to mean almost the exact opposite of what he intended. And so what they've done is said that churches have no right to interfere with government, when really our Constitution is set up so that the government would not interfere with the church. And they've just reversed it. And it's happened on our watch. It's happened in the last really 50 to 60 years. Yes, Nancy?
And our churches, the people in our churches have given in
Yes.
to the whole thing.
Right. And remember,
we have not stood our ground.
yes, and remember what it talked about in the first film, that their agenda all along was not to destroy the churches, but infiltrate them. And so if you infiltrate the church and make people think that everything's okay, this is exactly what happened in Jerusalem right before Nebuchadnezzar took the place down, is the prophets were all up doing the thing they'd always done. They were standing up and telling people, yeah, everything's A-okay. And God said, I didn't send them. They never spent time in my councils. They're not mine. But there they were using the name of God like they believed him. And sadly, they were just leading people astray. Collectivism is a broad ideology that includes all the things: communism, fascism, Nazism, socialism, left-wingism, liberalism. And then we get introduced to the idea that Islam also falls under this same ideology. We didn't realize it. It is a form of collectivism too. Very interesting. And of course, the end or the purpose of all collectivist schemes is a government that takes care of its citizens from cradle to the grave, and that's Marxism. And of course, the problem, it sounds real good, utopian, but in the end, nobody that takes power steps down, right? They're never going to give up power. Okay? Now, what about the City Hall thing? How many of you have ever had to deal with City Hall? Was his description accurate? They sit up there in their big chairs and they got microphones and, sit down, your time is up. You're out there in the little guy chairs. And I thought, boy, that is so funny. That's so realistic. And he says, they're collectivists, every one of them. They're enjoying this power. They've been drawn to it. They're predators. And really then, I think it's so critical what he went on to point out, that every single person on the planet would have done the exact same thing if they started with the same atheistic philosophy. And that's at the heart of this. It's an atheistic, God-rejecting philosophy that's at the heart of what they're doing. Because if you take the people who came over on the ship and came to Plymouth Rock, little group of, 50 people that survived first winter, and they set up a little compact amongst them, or a little agreement. And by the way, some of the colonies, actually Massachusetts and different ones, actually tried basically a collectivist mentality at the beginning, and it failed miserably. Some of them tried to impose, okay, we're going to be only the Quakers, right? And impose that on the community. But it's interesting when you start with people that are truly Christian, from a Christian philosophy and point of view, and believe it and live it, it has a completely different outcome. And really, our Constitution was born out of the anxiety of seeing governments in Europe fall or do so poorly because they weren't living by Christian principles. Very interesting to think about. So, they weren't uniquely evil. They were sinful men like the rest of us, but they had exceptionally bad ideas, the same ones that we are playing with today. America was based on the opposite concept of individualism, that the purpose of the state was not to govern the individual, but to protect the individual. The individual was supreme, and the state was the servant of the individual. Think about that. That's what our Constitution was designed for. Where are we today? Almost the opposite. In America, valuing each person, this is biblical. This is the guy from Iran, by the way, okay? The guy from Iran, Dr. Hormoz Shariat, says, in America, valuing each person, this is biblical. This comes from Christianity. You go to communist countries or Islamic countries, life is not valuable. You kill, so what? And that's exactly true. All right, let's go a little further here. Why didn't communism die?
It's not the case that the Cold War is over, or to put it another way, it's not the case that the West has won the Cold War. The Cold War was not a military confrontation between two military alliances. It was a war of ideologies. It was a war of utopian totalitarian socialism versus democracy, market economy, freedom.
I interviewed a New Zealander some years ago who infiltrated the New Zealand Communist Party and was sent to the Soviet Union to train at Lenin's Institute for Higher Learning in 1983. This was the school for communists from all over the world, 6,000 students at any one time, some of them on 7-year courses. They were taught there was going to be a massive opening to the West, that the communists did much better in times of détente than they did of conflict. So they were going to open up to the West, they were going to downplay communism, they were going to change their system.
One of the tenets laid down by Lenin was that you have to pretend to be defeated. Communism, as they say, or Leninism is the better word, has gone back and forth through this friendly mode, enemy mode, many times throughout history. And this is just to lure the opposition into a feeling of false security.
The way you finish ideological wars, the way you destroy an ideology, and we have historical precedent for that. That happened with the Nazis. We should have had the Cold War over 20 years ago, yes, but for that we would need a Nuremberg-style trial of communism, all the crimes exposed, all the archives open, the judgment of history passed. That didn't happen.
Now you've got to realize, when Nazi Germany was defeated in World War II, the Americans went in there and denazified the country. Anybody who was a Nazi was taken out of positions of power, totally changed the whole political climate. Russia was never de-KGB'd. The KGB was left in place, and now it is stronger than it ever was before. And you see their puppet, Mr. Putin, attempting to reinstitute the Soviet Empire now.
They may have changed their name. They took their hat, which said Communist Commissar across the top. They turned it around, and now it says entrepreneur or capitalist or social democrat or something. But it's the same hat on the same heads of the same Leninists.
Trial of communism should have finished that. It didn't happen, and therefore we are not out of that crisis. And that is the reason why we have Putin. That is the reason why you have Obama. It is still going on. The Cold War is going on. It's going on the streets of Moscow now. It's going on the streets of Tehran. It's going on really in America as well.
Okay. Why didn't communism die? Huh? Because we didn't kill it. All right? Yes, Aaron.
And this young lady from India is the one who brought in a lot of these exact same ideas. I get her emails twice a week of what they're supporting. And it's everything against what is standard, helpful, business-like, just bringing one chaos concept to the next, which is, that's the proof that, no, we're not interested in holding communism accountable.
Right. Okay. All right. Observations, thoughts? Okay. So in this school, Lenin's Institute for Higher Learning, they were teaching them that there's going to be a massive opening to the West, that the communists did much better in times of détente than they did in times of conflict. So they were going to open up the West. They were going to downplay communism. They were going to change the system. Instead of saying, we're communists, we're going to kill you, they played it down and worked to infiltrate. And that's exactly what they've done, and they've done it everywhere in our culture and society. And sadly, even many cases, we've helped them. And that's what's so strange. So they work for a false sense of security. And then they use the illustration with Nazism. At the end of the Second World War, we had the Nuremberg trials. Okay, we realize that's not going to fly. Although it's kind of ironic when you think about it, because our whole NASA space program were Nazis, basically. We went over to Germany by the way, at their request. Werner von Braun and so forth went over there and grabbed them before the Russians came in and brought their whole rocket development crew to the United States. Came right from Nazi Germany right into, I can't remember what state it was back in the South, and set up a community and established NASA. NASA is basically a result. Not saying that Werner von Braun was a hardcore Nazi, but that's who he was working for before he became the beginning of NASA. Kind of interesting to think about. So he says we should have ended the Cold War over 20 years ago. Why did he pick that particular? What would have been the occasion for ending the Cold War? Huh? Okay. Was there a physical event that might have been involved? The Berlin Wall, perhaps. The problem is we still didn't see them as really the enemy, and of course we weren't interested in going into a shooting war. Yeah, we're buddies now. Which, by the way, I think as Christians we have to be very, very careful. I'm very happy with some of the policies of the current president, right? We need to be very, very careful that we don't so wholeheartedly endorse the current president that we're not cautious to realize he does not know the Lord. He sometimes pretends that he does, but he could turn in a heartbeat, all right? And in fact, the complaint of the left has been all along that he's in cahoots with Russia. Well, we have always fought against that and so forth. But the fact of the matter is many times he makes stupid statements that are not true and gets himself in trouble. And I realize the media takes it and twists it and so forth. I understand all that. But we need to be very careful that we don't align ourselves politically behind someone because they've done some things that look good from our standpoint, and ignore the fact that the man does not give evidence of truly knowing the Lord as his Savior. He's not necessarily our hero, okay? And we need to be very, very careful to understand that he could build alliances in the wrong direction. And I just think we have to be very careful. So, all right. Should have ended 20 years ago, but it didn't. Russia was never de-KGB'd. As you know, my brother Dan went to far eastern Russia as a missionary pilot. He went as a missionary. He started out, he was a missionary in Alaska, and it was involved in an airlift from Alaska over to Russia, to far eastern Russia one year when they were in really dire straits and people were starving and didn't have blankets. I mean, it was a very nasty winter. And so he got involved with a Civil Air Patrol and a couple other charitable organizations, and he had a float plane at the time, and so he airlifted, but he airlifted Bibles. And the place where he went, the people were so thrilled they made contact. After the Soviet Union fell, he went over and established a church in Vanyina. And eventually, the no longer communist government expelled Dan and wouldn't allow him to go back. And he'll flat out tell you the same thing. What you had was, the communist government supposedly fell, but they just simply changed hats. It's the very same people were in power. You think they're going to give up power just because they're no longer the Communist Party? No, it's the very same thing. So he's right. They were never de-KGB'd, and so it's the trial of communism that should have happened simply did not. And so the Cold War is going on. I love how he said not only in the streets of Moscow, but also Tehran. That's Iran, as well as here in the United States. All right, let's go a little further, Rusty. What is their strategy?
Let me give you, if I might, an example. They have a particular program they want to implement, and they go in and they ask for everything. They ask for everything, and they're aggressive about it. They push ahead. And so they push until they get opposition starts to build up against it. And at that given moment, they evaluate the opposition. They say, Well, is there any strength to it? Will it last? Will we be able to endure it? Or do we push ahead even farther? If the movement grows up to where it can do them harm, they then back off and say, well, maybe we don't want it all. Let's compromise a little. Let us get along together now, because I'm willing to give up what I've asked for totally for just a bit of it. Aren't you willing to give up a bit that we can work together? Next thing you know, another month goes by, another year, and here they come again.
They'll just incrementally get what they want. Now, the classic example is Obamacare. Now, that was designed 100% by Democratic Socialists of America, Marxist group. They pushed it on America through Quentin Young, their member, who was the mentor of your president, Mr. Obama. But more than that, Quentin Young was a 40-year veteran of the Communist Party USA. So they got the first steps. The Affordable Health Care Act pushed through in 2009. It wasn't single-payer health care. It wasn't 100% socialised health care, which is what they're after, but they got as much as they could get. Now, if you read their publications, they are boasting it's going to fail. It's not going to do the job. It's going to let people down. But that's great, because then they're going to blame the greedy insurance companies and the nasty doctors, and then they're going to push full on for single-payer health care. They're using the dialectic, they're using Lenin, they're using Hegel. Get what you can get, reach a compromise, then when the opposition backs off, then you go forward for the next step. And you just keep on doing that and doing that and doing that till you get what you want.
That strategy is what they use on every issue, every time. We will see a single-payer system implemented by our government in the near future. As Obamacare collapses, as it was designed to, they will step up to fix the problem of high premiums and a disgruntled people with more government. We never seem to learn. We keep compromising, keep giving up ground, and keep playing strictly defense, which is why we always lose.
Okay. Okay. Reality. Okay. Yeah. However, in the short haul, we're going to live with the consequences of what we already are living with the consequences, aren't we? So, and by the way, our children and grandchildren will live with the consequences. I would like to believe the Lord's coming this year. I would love to believe that, and it's possible He might, but it's possible He may not. The Lord has waited 2,000 years already, 1,900 years. So we don't have a promise and guarantee of exactly when the Lord's return is. We ought to live as if it could be any day, and yet at the same time, we need to be very careful to not just wash our hands and say it doesn't matter what we do and what happens on our watch in the world where we live. So Obamacare, he says, was 100% designed by the Democratic Socialists of America, specifically Quentin Young, who's a 40-year veteran of the Communist Party. You remember Nancy Pelosi saying, well, we have to pass it and so you can read it after it's passed, right? And the reason she said that, because she hadn't read it either. It didn't matter to them. They were just taking a document that was handed to them and say, here, pass this through. Where did this document come from? And by the way, Barack Obama had only been in office how long? It was on his first 2-year period when he still had both houses of Congress, right? It had to happen pretty quick. How do you write a 2,000-page plan for the complete takeover of the whole medical system in America in a year or two? You don't. They'd been working on it for years. They knew exactly, and it was their glory moment when Barack Obama was elected president and they had both houses of Congress. Because now, and that's why they didn't care about dealing with the border crisis. They didn't care about any of the other things. They had one objective in mind: get this through, because this is the area that will take complete control of our lives. All right? Fatal to grave. And then now they're boasting that it's going to fail. The ones who designed it are, oh yeah, it's going to fail. Well, it's because of those greedy insurance companies and the greedy doctors. And that's the reason it's going to fail. Right? And so then what's the solution? The solution for us is to say, oh yeah, we need government to help us. And we give in. You know, I still remember when we were we came home on furlough up in Oregon. And what was the new school plan that they came up with back then? It was outcome-based education. And it was so funny because outcome-based education, you remember that? Maybe that was only in Oregon, I don't know. Was it here too? So I went, for some reason, somebody gave me a trial, one-day membership to a local athletic club. And I went down there and thought, well, I'll play racquetball once. So I went down there and I'm banging the ball off the wall, and the guy comes in and says, hey, you want someone to play against? I said, sure. So we started playing racquetball. Over the conversation, we started a little conversation. Before you know it, I'm talking about the complete failure of outcome-based education. This guy gets all indignant. He was one of the authors of it in the state of Oregon. Boy, I stuck my foot in it, talking with him, And, but I couldn't help but smile, because I said, well, the problem is the teachers and the students don't even know what the objective is. And he said, well, we haven't had time to write all of it yet. And they were already doing it. But the funny part is this was supposedly the answer to their previous system, which was a failure. And now the next one is a response to this failure. But in each case, every time, it's an advance on government control of taking over and making the students less and less independent, more and more dependent. And that's what they're building in constantly. And sadly, most parents aren't going to have the time to read the fine lines and the details. I told them, I said, look, our daughter we just came back from Brazil, and our daughter's in one of the classes, and they sit around tables and they do a lot of talky, but there's no homework, there's no assignments, there's no things that they actually have to learn. It's just a lot of gooey mush. Well, and he came up, well, we're still working on some of this, We eventually pulled our kids out of the schools. We thought we were going to try this. We're going to try and work with the public school system. This was in 1994, first furlough. And it lasted about a month and a half, and we pulled them out. And Joan went to talk to Sarah's teacher, and she said, well, why are you taking her out? And she says, because they're absolutely not learning a thing. I mean, it's just an absolute waste. But sadly, so their strategy is to push. I love the illustration of the little group of guys pushing until they get resistance. Then they evaluate the resistance. If it's too great, well, then they stop and say, oh, let's compromise. Let's get along. And then when everybody says, okay, let's get along, there they go pushing again. And that is exactly what we've seen happen in America over and over again, isn't it? All right? We've got a minute or two left. Any final observations? We're going to stop right there.